Welcome everybody to my first video, as promised yesterday, without beard and professional background and hopefully better noise. Our goal is to look ahead into the future, try to leave the crisis and stress and panic behind us, and hopefully start to come up with a plan together that we can execute to come back stronger at the end of all of this, starting today, because we really don't have any time to waste. Quantum technologies are just too important to suffer a winter or pandemic, and we all need to find ways to move forward. So with this said, in this initial video, I will cover three topics. First, if you're still in crisis management mode, I'll share very quickly some resources to aid you along with that. Number two, I mentioned it yesterday, we'll look at some crisis communication towards your key constituencies, which is a crucial first step. And then thirdly, and the bulk of today and going forward, how to come back stronger and start with it now. So we'll look at some best practices, benchmarks, and come up with our own framework that we will then elaborate on in the next few videos. All of my videos, including the slides, information that I share, will be available on my company website, interference.consulting/quantum is coming. So you can access all those links, resources, check out the videos, and leave your feedback as well. With that, let's get started. If you are still working on the actual crisis management, obviously, number one priority, keeping your people safe, making sure you have your remote workstation set up, making sure you're communicating with your customers, really an overwhelming checklist of things that need to get done. I went through it myself over the last 10 days or so, and many others that I am part of a consulting network called Umbrex, and at Umbrex, my colleagues and I, we put together a playbook for the pandemic, for mostly geared towards small businesses, but a lot of really tremendous resources to help you assess the impact of the crisis on your business, how to come up with a management plan around the crisis, how to communicate around the crisis, how do you implement mitigation strategies, how do you operate more effectively, and worst case, how to deal with insolvency. So in that handbook that is available online on the Umbrex website, and you'll get the link on my website for free, of course. All these topics are addressed in detail, including references, checklist that I just mentioned, all resources, links to government websites that can help, and so forth. My colleagues at Umbrex are also available for advisory around any of these questions. Secondly, still talking about crisis management, Stephen Myers from SSA & Company, a boutique consulting firm run by the former CEOs of Hyatt Hotel, United Technologies, and Office Depot. I used to work for them for 6 years. Is a leading voice really in the ear of many CEOs and CFOs of Fortune 500 companies, and he shares some really great advice on remote working and how to be efficient in terms of working remotely, less the tech stack, but more the behavior change, culture change, and how to make sure your team is doing that effectively. The link is available online. I hope and believe that most of you have implemented much of this already, and if you're stuck or need help, we are here for you. Just reach out and we'll get through this together. My focus going forward will be on how do we rebuild, how do we come back stronger, and how do we start now. So let's look at that. Promised it yesterday in my introduction, crisis communication, really a crucial first step that we all have to go through. Why? Because trust is everything. Without trust, no company, no product, no technology will ever find any market. Without trust, you will fail, especially in our times of crisis and uncertainty as we currently have, and especially in a chaotic and erratic environment that we currently have in many of our markets due to the somewhat slow, chaotic response by government organizations. And others, many of us in our personal lives also see this on social media, which is just really overwhelming and quite frankly frustrating at this point. So standing out in the sea of negative comments is very important, and bringing the trust to your key constituencies should be your number one priority. at this point. It is more important now than ever before to build trust around your company, products, and vision. And you have to do this now, tomorrow, and every day thereafter. It, in fact, should drop whatever qubits you're currently holding in your hands, stop whatever CNOT gate you were about to unleash, and dedicate yourself to this number one task exclusively as the CEO, leader of your organization. Cannot repeat this enough. Do not outsource this to your marketing team. Do not give it to a spokesperson, a consultancy, or an agency. This trust has to come from the very top, and for that the communication has to be authentic and personal. It can only come from you, and it means you have a new job going forward, starting tonight, which is to build this trust, put the content together around it, develop your strategy to communicate it, and get it out to your key constituencies, and repeat this every day, sometimes many times a day. Don't believe me? That's all right. We have some references for you from the experts. Number one, General Stanley McChrystal, a 4-star general and former commander of the Joint Special Operations Command, just earlier this week, addressed 80 CEOs of the Fortune 500 in a private phone conversation. On this call, he shared some of his tips for crisis communication coming out of a war scenario. Number one, CEOs must communicate personally 2 to 3 times a day around the crises to different stakeholders. Again, you cannot outsource this, you cannot delegate it, you can't just send another email announcing your strategy around COVID-19. It has to be authentic, personal, repeated communication every day, adapted to every single target audience, and it has to come from the very top. You, the CEO, the leader, the president, the chairman, the head of your institute. Number two, you should not communicate around details, logistics, plans, but around principles. What is it that you stand for? What is it that you're going to do? And how will you get there? And you need to be conveying a sense of pushing forward, always pushing forward. In fact, this is the worst time imaginable to stand still or look backwards. In a time of crisis, and this comes from General Stanley McChrystal on this phone call, what you have to do is push forward. This is your only strategy of survival. Identify the top 3 priorities. Very logical here. Again, General Stanley McChrystal points out, be personal. It has to be authentic. It goes back to this notion of trust. People do not want to see a corporate communique, some PR or press announcement. They want to know who the leader is, what that person stands for, and what she or he is going to do to get through this crisis. It has to come from the very top, and it has to be repeated every day, many times, every week for the foreseeable future. This is your new number one job. Stephen Myers, we mentioned him earlier from SSA Company, made some recommendations as well, and he compared in a study good behaviors versus bad behaviors in a times of crises. Good behaviors are, instead of turning inward and micromanaging, you're turning outward. Counterintuitive, but very important. You leverage your team. While the communication, presence, and vision comes from you, you leverage your team to put all of this together, move it forward, and execute it. You have a growth mindset, a can-do attitude. You're not standing still. You leverage your company by both seeking and taking advice. Hopefully that is something that I can help with, or turn to one of my colleagues at Umbrix or any other trusted advisor, consultant that you have in your network. But taking advice and getting an outside perspective is just as critical. You're able to lead from the front line, from the side, and from the back. You offer the 360-degree vision and give your troops, your team, and the market, your customers, the confidence that you know what's going on and that you're in charge. You change the things that matter and you stay ruthlessly focused and prioritized on them. This is not a time to boil oceans. You make decisions with available information, and you keep moving forward. And that available information might be very scant, very noisy, very uncertain, but it is what you have. And you have to take that information and make decisions today. Move forward, revisit the information, revisit your decisions, move forward. But you have to look at that information, analyze the data, however weak the signals might be, move forward. And as a leader, in times of stress and pandemic, you absorb stress. You're a source of calm and confidence and positivity. A former colleague of mine once said, you're a flatliner, always reliable, always dependable. You do not amplify or create more chaos. The research on this is widespread, has been conducted for many decades and very clear. Leaders and companies who communicate early, often personally, and from the top recover way sooner and stronger than others. If you're putting a crisis communication plan together and think you'd benefit from an external set of eyes on it, please reach out to me for a quick chat to walk through it together. But I urge you, do not neglect this task. This is your new job. Potentially more important than doing research on your quantum hardware, developing new algorithms, new software. Now is a time for building trust and for communicating with the market, with your clients and other key constituencies. So hopefully that is a helpful first piece of information. Going forward, we really want to look towards the future. And in my opinion, the future starts right now. As difficult as the situation might be, as chaotic and scant the information, the data might be, time will move forward. Competition will move forward. Customers will move forward. Markets will evolve. And it is only if you start thinking about that, listening to it today, and acting on it today, that you have a chance of coming out of this stronger than going into this crisis. And working in a field such as quantum technologies, that is still on the maturity curve fairly early and a highly complex and difficult topic, taking this attitude is even more crucial, because appetites and attention spans for these complicated, immature, albeit exciting technologies will be much shorter when we get out of this than it was a couple weeks ago. And we all know what the situation was a couple weeks ago. All right, so as I mentioned yesterday, much of my career was spent in consulting, and a good consultant is nothing without a framework or an acronym that will help us explore systematically. And in fact, one of the biggest beliefs any consultant holds is that a bad strategy is better than no strategy, and any model is better than any expert. Build a systematic framework with a clear, simple strategy, nothing fancy, nothing earth-shattering, but if executed diligently, it will make all the difference in the world. All right, so let's see if we can build a framework specifically for quantum ventures and corporations to strive post-COVID-19. Where we'll start is by doing some very basic research and benchmarking, typical consultant behavior. So I looked at the market a little bit and experts, what they are saying. First one, Bain, one of the most reputed consulting companies. And they recommend 3 actions to take. Number 1, align your senior team with a wake-up call. It is time to shake up your old structures, get people motivated, get them aligned, and have them chase down this number 1 goal that you will set for them. Number 2, establish a dedicated senior team in a war room type setting. The very common and usual task force idea. Number 3, outline macro scenarios and translate them into plans. Bain also offers a beautiful interactive graphic around the 3 recommendations, and for the details, The link will be available on my website, and I encourage you to check it out. Some of the key points, and this segues with what we said earlier, is over-communicate with transparency. And transparency is really what builds trust in the end. If you're personal, if you're authentic, and if you're transparent, and if people, markets, constituencies, customers think that you have a plan, they will trust you and they will follow you and you will thrive. Pivot resources to current and future pockets of growth. And this is very important. Focus. Identify what these current pockets of growth are. Do not stop there. Look at the future. Look 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months ahead, and try to understand where growth in your market, in your target audience, in your customer base is going to come from. That is where you need to pivot your resources to today, because that is where the market, post-recession and post-pandemic, is going to be moving to. Very important, and this is never fun for any company, lean out the company for the medium term. This doesn't necessarily mean layoffs or redundancies. What it does mean is that you should be efficient and effective from a financial and operating point of view, but also from a mentality and culture point of view. How do you reach decisions? How do you develop products? How do you hold meetings? How do you share knowledge and information internally? And how do you go to market? Are you using lean and agile best practices to achieve all of this? Use all of this information to define how you will outperform the competition. The competition, by the way, is not just another quantum vendor or startup or IBM or Honeywell. The competition is AI vendors, digital products and offerings, maybe even blockchain, anything that senior managers, innovation type resources, technical folks in your customer base might be looking at and allocating their budget towards is a potential competitor for your quantum program. You need to take that into account. Bain also suggests, if you have the resources, to be looking at the mergers and acquisition. This is a great time for those amongst us who have those means to consolidate and acquire expertise and resources. Look at your product, service, and customer roadmap. Revise and optimize your marketing plans around different scenarios and plan for this change in customer, especially what the new digital remote environment will mean to them and in consequence you. BCG, another one of the arguably top 3 consulting firms, calls all of this reaction, rebound, recession, reimagination. I will focus on rebound and reimagination. What BCG argues in these areas is that number one, you have to identify a path to grow new, less in-person sales channels. And number 2, you have to change your marketing and communication plans in anticipation of a rebound. Very similar language to what we heard from Bain. And they go on saying, and that is really BCG's key message in all of this pandemic and recession that we're starting to experience, is that a crisis like COVID-19 inevitably changes behaviors profoundly. In this case, we expect customers to become and remain more digital, more distributed, and more reliant on data and analysis. The most important thing to do is to look ahead and understand where your markets will be moving and to pick up on any weak signal around new trends. Again, this idea of looking at data, looking for information, no matter how weak or noisy that information might be. The payoff in this graphic, very simple. Folks, companies, leaders who stick to this strategy will outperform with a 2x revenue growth. Laggards that will suffer a 49% decline. You pick. BCG also recommends to set up a rapid response team and over-communicate. Bain said the same thing in different words. BCG recommends to instill commercial urgency into the front lines now. This is not a time to stand still. This is not a time to hit the pause button. In fact, the opposite is what you need to be doing. Stay loyal to your customers, stay close to your customers, move preemptively to size advantages, and understand what will change for good. McKinsey, we're all very familiar with them, says exactly the same thing and calls it resolve, resiliency, return, reimagination, and reform. The details, and you can check out the link on the website, are exactly the same as what Bain and the BCG recommend. Let's turn to Accenture, one of my former employers, who points out, and I'm sharing the link here, that the time of the digital workplace has finally arrived and is here to stay. Remote and distributed working will see a significant uptake after this is over, and it's not going to go away. Will this affect your business? Probably. How? No clue. But it is time to start thinking about it. More interestingly though, Accenture looks at how companies and leaders in a wide-ranging Fortune 500 survey adopt new enterprise technology. And for those amongst you who have any doubts about it, quantum hard and software is an enterprise technology. It is not different. The findings of their study can be summed up as most companies suck at buying new technologies and fail because they buy the wrong stuff too often, which costs them almost half of their revenue. So it's your job to help them make better decisions. And like every good consultant, Accenture came up with an acronym for that, PATH. Sharing the graphic here, PATH stands for progress, adoption, timing, the human, machine, and workforce, and strategy. These 5 buckets lay out in detail what it takes to help an enterprise client reach a good buying decision. All right, that was a lot of information. First step in any consulting assignment, go collect the data, do your benchmarks, look at what experts are saying, and it might be pretty confusing and overwhelming, so let's do some consulting magic ourselves and see how we put this together in a framework specifically targeted for quantum vendors and ventures to help you rebound from this stronger than before. You're probably not going to like it. It's a lot of work, and none of it happens in a lab. But those who will implement it rigorously will win. Unless you don't believe people like Stephen Miles, General McChrystal, SSA and Company, Bain, BCG, McKinsey, Accenture, or myself, which I'll understand. But this is going to be your main job for the next 3 months and beyond. All right. After combing through the data, analyzing, segmenting it, came up with our own new framework that we will be exploring in all the following subsequent videos. And I called it André's OJ Pyramid. André's OJ Pyramid has 5 levels. The first one is a strategic level. And within strategy, we'll be looking at 3 points. CEO-led strategic projects around macro trends. We're going to look at competitive analysis, and we're going to look at M&A for those who are in a position to pursue that. Level number 2, operations. Internal and external communication strategy, your task force, cost efficiency, lean and agile operations, and we will explore the digital workplace. Level number 3, product, your strategic roadmap, digital customer, build solutions for future problems, not just hard or software. Level number 4, sales, your immediate plan of attack, superb customer service, diversifying your sales channels, solution selling across strategy, process, and cloud, customer onboarding and training, including virtually. Number 5, marketing. Tell your story, transparent personal voice, and scenario planning. I believe that if you as a quantum venture or quantum vendor execute together with a trusted partner, your team, and all the resources that you have on André's OJ pyramid over the next few weeks, you will not only survive the current economic and health crisis, you're going to come back from the quantum winter stronger than ever before, with new ideas and new resources, and with real markets and customers that will trust you and love you and stick with you for a very, very long time. By the way, this also means, unless you're one of the leading quantum vendors out of the Fortune 500, looking at you, IBM, Google, Microsoft, Honeywell, Intel, all the rest of you has to focus. Otherwise, it is simply too much to do to be successful. Or maybe you're so smart that you think you can wing it. I'd call it half-assing it. Good luck. Focus will be your priority. All right, I hope this got us all started on a good foot. In upcoming videos, we will explore each and every step of André's OJ pyramid, one by one. We'll give you the best practices, the resources, templates, and to-do lists for each of these points. And we'll talk about how executing on them. Let's go get those oranges. Quantum is coming.
Orange juice, I gotta have my